Hello and welcome to part 2 of our campaign and campaign finance video. Let's go ahead and jump in. We've got a lot to talk about. All right, we left off last class with, or the last video session, talking about the FECA. And the FECA was put into effect in the early 1970s to try to make presidential campaigns and elections more transparent and to try to take money out of the equation, all right, level the playing field. The FECA was going to put forth a bunch of rules or federal guidelines for elections. They're going to create some limitations on how much could be given by an individual. This is going to be called hard money. They outlined a public financed or public funded presidential campaign system. They're going to force people to disclose who and how much they were giving, who they were giving money to. They also created a federal elections commission to go ahead and oversee all of these different areas. That was going to go into effect in the early 70s and was going to be challenged by what was called Buckley versus Valeo. That's a landmark Supreme Court case. And the court upheld most of the FECA, and you can see that here on the slide. The one thing that it overturned was the idea that individuals were limited on how much money they could contribute to themselves. All right, and the court ruled that, if you have money and you want to spend it, you want to use it, it's just like using your voice. It's a form of expression. So individuals cannot be capped with those contribution limits. They could spend as much as they want on their campaigns. All right, so is money equivalent to speech? And that's the question that comes up here with Buckley Valeo. And the Supreme Court says yes. Okay, they did authorize the idea that the federal government can regulate elections as long as laws are narrowly tailored and advance what's called a compelling public interest, which means they're done in the interest of the overall public in maintaining a fair election system. All right, so the Supreme Court made two decisions there with Buckley Valeo. One, that spending money is just like expression, which is protected by the First Amendment. And two, the government can step in and limit and put some rules around the election process. All right, the next piece of substantial legislation is going to come about in 2002 with the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, sometimes called the McCain-Feingold Act, and BICRA for short. And that came about in 2002, and it was the result of an attempt to try to close up some of the loopholes that had been discovered in the FECA. All right. Two things you have to understand moving forward here, two concepts. One is hard money. Hard money is the money that's directly given from a candidate to a political campaign or candidate. It'd be like if I wanted to write a check for a particular candidate. That check, sure, I could do it, but there was an amount of money that I could give was going to be limited, and my name would be publicly attached to that amount and added to the public record. Soft money, on the other hand, is money that's not given directly to a candidate or his campaign. It's going to be money that's generally going to be spent on campaign building activities or party building activities. Some going to be spent on advertising, promoting different positions. They're definitely going to benefit candidates, but it's not received or spent directly by a candidate's campaign. Again, you'll know the difference when you hear a political ad and you wait for the end and it says this ad was sponsored by, brought to you by, paid for by blank. That's an ad that was actually bought by that candidate or campaign with hard money. All right, so McCain-Feingold, the first thing it's going to attempt to do is try to ban soft money. And they're going to ban unlimited soft money contributions by corporations, labor unions, and wealthy individuals to national political parties. So they're going to close that soft money loophole, whereas, I have a bunch of cash. I got $50 million in the bank. I'm going to take that $50 million. I'm going to give my max hard money amount, and then I'm going to go even farther, and I'm going to give a huge chunk of money to a national party. And I'm going to say, listen, I want you to use this for party building activities. And then the party would take it, divide it up, and eventually use it to support their candidates. So this is one of the loopholes around hard money that was used by political parties to circumvent the process. So McCain-Feingold closes that loophole. McCain-Feingold also had a provision dealing with what were called electioneering communications. And it also banned soft money contributions for electioneering, any type of electioneering corporations by corporations and labor unions. All right, so if corporations and labor unions wanted to buy broadcast media, television, or radio time, the nature of that media is very limited. Okay, they couldn't refer to any national candidates. Okay, It had to be outside of 60 days before a general election or 30 days out of a primary election. So again, the amount of advertising corporations and labor unions could do to try to influence an election is limited by the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. Now, if you're a rich, wealthy individual, you can spend as much money as you want, whenever you want, as long as, okay, you're not coordinating with that candidate's campaign, which means you're not working hand in hand with that campaign. All right, so as long as there's space between what you want as an individual, hey, I want to hear my voice, I want to buy television time, that can be done as long as it's not connected to that candidate in his campaign. All right, the next piece of information, we got the FECA, we got the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, and now we have Citizens United, which is the name of another landmark Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court in 2010 ruled that campaign finance rules like McCain-Feingold limit free speech. All right, and basically they overturned the idea, the electioneering communications provision of McCain-Feingold was overturned by Citizens United. Corporations can spend as much as they want on political ads leading up to elections. All right, so that's changed. That component of the campaign reform, the BICRA, is no longer there. The only thing that's left of the BICRA today is the ban on soft money given directly to political parties. You can see here that the Citizens United case has doubled the amount of outside spending in election years. You'll see its passage in 2010. It jumps through the roof in 2012. All right, so let's talk about some of the different bodies that do raise money. Okay, we talked about the legislation that limits spending and advertising. Now we're going to talk about some of the entities that actually contribute money. First, we have political action committees. Political action committees are tied to hard money. They're going to raise and spend money to elect and defeat opponents or candidates. These are going to be connected to interest groups, businesses, and labor unions. Okay, there are limits placed on PACs, and again, these were revised and set in place by the BICRA, and these still exist today. Okay, PACs are very limited. They can give $5,000 any candidate, committee per election, primary, or general, special. $5,000 is not a lot of money. PACs don't wield a lot of influence with presidential elections because there's really not enough money there to have big impact, but they can be very influential in congressional elections. So political action committees are hard money. They are registered with the FEC, okay, and anyone who gives to a PAC must be disclosed. All right, there's some other different types of advocacy groups. We just talked about PACs there at the top. We also have super PACs, and that's the newest group. These are 527 independent expenditure PACs. I know that's a mouthful, so just call them a super PAC. These groups do not make any contributions to campaigns or candidates. They make what are called independent expenditures. So they're independent bodies. They're outside of the candidate and his campaign. They can engage in unlimited political spending as long as, again, they don't coordinate directly with candidates or their political parties. They can raise money from corporations, unions, other groups, and individuals without any legal limits, which traditional PACs have limits. Their donors still do have to be disclosed. So super PACs pretty much can raise and spend as much money as they want without any real federal limits. All right, 527 groups. You have a regular 527 group, not a super PAC. These groups also can raise unlimited soft money, which they can use for voter mobilization and different types of issue advocacy. They also have to disclose their donors. Again, kind of this 527 group, which came about in 2008 around the Kerry, or 2004 with the Kerry campaign, they are going to really morph into those super PACs today. Again, they use this tax-exempt code to try to circumvent some of the FEC rules because, again, they're not fully into that election commission's jurisdiction. Another example of that is the 501 group. That's a nonprofit tax-exempt group which spends at least more than half of its time as a charity organization. Okay? Again, they're generally called social welfare organizations, and they don't do elections all the time. Here's the interesting thing about 501 groups, which makes them different and worth mentioning. They don't have to disclose who is donating to them. 527s, you can see here these soft money PACs. These 527s can accept contributions any amount from any source. They don't make expenditures or advocate for the election to defeat candidates. And again, they're unregulated by the FEC. and they're not subject to the same limits as everyone else. And you can see here the amount of money that was spent by some of these PAC groups. Again, this goes back to 2004. You'll see here the Swift Vets and POWs for Truth were a group that was created really to work against John Kerry. All right, and you can see here there's another example. One of the leading Democratic interest groups was dedicated to defeating Bush in 2004. Again, it was financed by Democratic donors, and it financed a ton of voter mobilization in 17 battleground states in order to try to get the Democratic Party to get a victory back in 2004. So you can see they can have a ton of influence, and again, they ultimately didn't win the election, but that money was spent outside of traditional campaigning and candidate funding. Here's hard money and contribution limits. You can see it there. From the last election cycle, you can see that individuals have limits on how much they can give to candidates, committees, party committees, PACs, and there's the total amounts there that they can give for any 2-year cycle. So the maximum amount any individual in the United States can give directly to a candidate and their campaign is $117,000. And you can take a look at this slide on your own time. All right. The federal laws, again, the FECA and the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act are going to force candidates to raise small amounts of money, but that doesn't mean they can't raise huge amounts. Barack Obama's raised more money than any candidate in history, mainly through $25 and $50 donations. All right, how has money corrupted our electoral process? What does money have to do with democracy? A great deal. All right, it gives wealthy people and groups an unfair advantage influencing election and outcome. Now, you can go ahead and take a peek at that and think about that in your own mind. Do you think that money does that? Second, it affects how people vote, who votes, and how they vote. It also becomes a condition for who runs office and who does not. Again, it makes up people's minds whether it's worth running or not running. It also affects information that the electorate receives about candidates and their issue positions. All right, what information you get, it can be influenced by those super PACs and that unlimited funding. It also affects public perception of how our system works and whether or not it is fair to the regular person on the street or, the wealthy business owner. Thanks for joining me for part 2 of election finance and campaigns. When we get to class, we'll have some additional information. Thanks.